Toughest Rodeo at the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th at Wells Fargo Arena. It's rodeo and a whole lot more. Come early for autographs, pony rides, and more. See more action, the best entertainment, and be part of the fun. It's too great to wait. Get tickets now at HiVTix.com. It's wild, it's western, it's pro rodeo at the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th.
Two guys, two Chris's, one network. Iowa Everywhere. It's time for Two Guys with Chris Williams and Chris Hassel. Presented by Fareway Meat Grocery from the Channel Seed Studios. Where? Everywhere. Live and always on demand at Iowa Everywhere.
Good morning and welcome to Two Guys on Iowa Everywhere in the Channel Seed Studios. We are two guys, but we are not the two guys.
No,
I'm
neither
Jake
of us
Brend,
is
in
Chris.
case you didn't know. This is Andrew Downs, AD. How's it going, AD?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, man? I'm excited to be here. It's a little early. Not for life, but for like being camera ready and full of hot takes. But no, happy to be here. Glad to work with you, and glad that the guys called us in from the bullpen.
Yeah, this should be fun. I was thinking about it. We've probably never talked for more than 15 minutes.
No,
straight.
you're right.
So
no.
I know when I was an intern for Murph and Andy at the radio or at the TV station, I hung out with you in the booth one day for a little bit, but this will be fun getting to know each other and getting some on-air chemistry. And you've got a busy day here on Iowa Everywhere.
Jeez, man. Yeah, 3 podcasts today. Doing this, obviously. Murph and Andy be live at 1, as we always are. We're going to shorten that show just a little bit. Iowa kicks off about 1:35 or so this afternoon, so we won't overlap that too much. And then the final edition of 2024 of Instant Iowa with Chris Hassel, who apparently will be back, I guess. I don't know where he is this morning, but we'll have that as soon as the game ends today, the Music City Bowl against Missouri.
So I actually just got a message why Hassel isn't here.
Okay.
So when Iowa State won 10 games, it about killed him.
It did.
And everyone kind of saw that happen over the air over the couple of weeks. 11 wins did kill him. But apparently he will be back for Instant
He'll be
Iowa.
revived.
He will be back for Instant Iowa following the Music City Bowl. We're brought to you by Fareway. I've actually got a Fareway ribeye in my fridge that I got for Christmas. Gonna maybe go buy a twice baked potato and some asparagus from Fareway Meat and Grocery to pair it with that.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing better than Fareway. If you're having people over for the college football playoff on New Year's Day, Fareway's your spot to get all of it.
I worked in the Fareway Meat department when I was at Iowa, and I can vouch for the quality, man. That was one of the fun jobs. One of those fun part-time jobs. It was nice to always have Sundays off. That was great. Saturdays were always crazy in the meat department. But yeah, I felt like I got to wear one of those paper hats.
That's what I was just about to say. They've got the best meat department hats in the world, probably.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would sweat through like 6 of them in a shift. It was pretty gross.
They've just got so much good meat there. So if you need any sort of grocery for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Fareway Meat and Grocery is your spot. They've been with Iowa Everywhere since the very beginning, and we want to thank them so much. We talked about where Hassel's at. Williams is stuck at Disney World in the rain. Is there a worse spot to be stuck in the rain than Disney World? I can't think of many others.
No, because the whole time you're just thinking about what you should be doing. Look how quick that Pop-Tart high wears off a guy like Bloom. I mean, 12 hours before this video's taken, he's riding high, celebrating everything, and now you're lonely, screaming kids. Williams texted us at some point yesterday He's like, they don't serve alcohol at the place we're at.
Oh no.
Kids are screaming. It's pouring down rain, so everybody's kind of stuck in one place. So all the kids are upset because they can't go do all the things they want to do. You've spent like an arm and a leg just to get into this place and get like fast pass tickets and things. You're gonna sit in one of those restaurants and drop $300 on chicken tenders and watered down Diet Coke, and the whole time you're steps away from the happiest place on earth. It goes from the happiest place on earth to the most depressing place on earth in a snap.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we just won the Pop-Tarts Bowl. What are you gonna do now?
Going to Disney World.
I like it. I'm glad they got to do that. I'm glad you take the family down to Orlando for a bowl game. You get to see some of the sights, but and then you're stuck. It's not like you live down there. You can pick and choose based on the weather. So it's too bad it rained, and God, that had to have been just terrible.
Bloom's got the poncho on. I don't think anyone else does. I think it's just Bloom with the poncho. Yeah, that sounds like the worst place to be stuck in the rain. I've been stuck at a state soccer, Iowa high school state soccer in the rain. That's brutal too. But
again, anytime like the thing, if you're home, if rain ruins your plans, at least you're home. If you're, somewhere like that, at least you're kind of with other people. There are times when you're in the rain and it's like, hey, we're a team, we're getting through this. But Disney World isn't like that. I like Chris with Aladdin here. The thing I like most about this picture is the fanny pack.
Yeah, that ties it all together.
It really does. Aladdin probably has one on his other side, like a little fanny pack. I'm not surprised Chris loves Aladdin. That tracks. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I
can't really explain it.
I was about to say the opposite. I didn't tab Williams as an Aladdin guy.
Okay.
One of my best friends from college, I don't know if she still does this. I hope not. She used to watch Aladdin every night before bed.
Wow.
Every single night. And not the animated, the live action one.
The Will Smith Aladdin?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She knew every line of the movie.
That's like a huge red flag.
I
mean, it was a red flag when I thought it was the animated version.
I refuse to ever watch it. I've never seen the live action one. And she was probably the main reason why. Because every single night, I'd probably watch Goodfellas twice a month, and that's probably a red flag. That's 24 times a year.
Yeah,
I can't imagine doing it 365 times a year.
See, but you're young and single. You can do things like that. Like, you could just kind of turn on whatever. You have full control over what you watch. I have very little control over what I watch between the kids. And I mean, my wife and I have pretty similar taste, and so we like to watch a lot of the same things. But I had a time when I was in like my early college years, back when VCRs were a thing. Jake and Aiden, let me take you back in the Wayback Machine.
I've used one at a time.
Used to have these tapes. I used to watch. It was like the summer between my freshman and sophomore year at Iowa, and I was back home, and I would just have Happy Gilmore in the VCR. And then anytime I had a little bit of downtime, I'd just play it. And whether I watched the whole movie that day or I'd watch like 10 minutes, and I'd just start it from wherever I was. And as soon as it ended, I'd rewind it and go back to the beginning. And I probably watched that movie 45 times over the course of the summer. But I feel okay about my decisions.
So you're telling me when you're married with kids, you can't get home at 3 a.m. and watch Dune 2?
I mean,
like
you can.
Last week?
You can, but at 6:30 when the kids get up, it makes it pretty rough.
It's a rude awakening.
It is.
I can imagine that. Well, let's get into the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Iowa State, some are calling it the biggest win in program history over Miami. Just kidding. So Iowa State wins. Actually a really fun game.
Yeah.
Most people tabbed this before bowl season as either the first or second most interesting bowl on paper, and it certainly lived up to most of that hype. Do you think Iowa State fans can take much of anything from a win in a bowl game, or not even Iowa State fans in general, just any fan base playing in a non-playoff game bowl?
So like realistically, tangibly, probably not. I don't know that this means a lot going into next season. I don't know that you gain a lot of momentum or learned a lot about the team or anything like that. It's still going to be probably a tumultuous few weeks or months in the offseason. You really don't know what Iowa State's going to look like next season just because of what you saw. That being said, the only thing that matters with bowl games at this point is getting that win and being able to celebrate. And the celebration that we all were a part of or witnessed or have seen since on Saturday night within Cyclone Nation is why you play these games. It's why they still matter. It's why we still care as fans. I mean, Cyclone fans got to celebrate that game, got to celebrate that team and that season. It helps that it was in the Pop-Tart Bowl where they do those, it's the silliest bowl. It's the most fun bowl. It helps that it was against a pretty good Miami team who at least for a half had one of the best players in college football. And so, yeah, I think there is the thing to be taken away from this with the win is just, hey, you got one more chance to kind of celebrate this team, to show these guys that you love them, to remember this season on a high note. If the final part of this season is getting beat by Arizona State the way they did in the Big 12 championship game, and then even losing a close game to Miami, it's going to put a damper on the season when you look back at 2024 and say, yeah, we won 10 games and made it to the Big 12 championship, but it really kind of fell apart at the end. As a Hawkeye fan, I know this from 2015. 12-0 is 12-0, and it will always be there, and I'll always celebrate that. Part of that season was dampered by the fact that they lost the Big 10 championship game and then got blown out in the Rose Bowl. And so, and that's when bowl games still felt like they mattered a little bit more than they do now. So, again, I don't think there's anything tangible that you take away. I don't think this means a lot moving forward. But it was a great night Saturday night, and I think Cyclone fans can appreciate that.
It definitely means something a little more too for the people that travel, because
Absolutely.
I've been on those trips when you get blown out and then you think, oh gosh, now I got to sit in the Orlando airport and fly back. It's a little easier to do that when you win.
Yeah.
And as far as the perception, it shouldn't matter, but it does. Jeff Woody put it best on Cyclone Fanatic post-game Saturday night. He said, the voters are idiots and you've got to treat them like that. When June, July, whenever the preseason AP poll comes out, voters will look back and see, oh, Iowa State beat Miami, and they'll see underneath the leaders that Cam Ward had 2 touchdowns. And 90% of the voters probably won't even know that Cam Ward didn't play in the second half. And Iowa State will probably get bumped 2 or 3 spots in next year's preseason AP poll just for beating Miami. And that's dumb. It shouldn't be like that. But as we saw this year, it matters. And it matters where you start, because if you start unranked like BYU did, they really didn't get a fair shot at the playoffs at 10-2. So if BYU starts this season 15th, they're probably in the playoff if they have the season that they do. And then, you mentioned it. Fans will probably just remember this season a little more fondly.
Absolutely. Again, it leaves such a bad taste in your mouth. We can all say these games don't matter, and realistically and tangibly, they might not matter. And as a Hawkeye fan, I'm sitting here today trying to get amped up for a bowl game this afternoon. It's hard to get that into it. But once they kick off, it's still a game, right? Your team is still out there, and then you start seeing, that these guys they do care, and that's another big part of these bowl games. It's often who wants to be there. It seemed like both teams wanted to be there on Saturday night, and that was great. Now we'll talk about Cam Ward and his decision at halftime, but that Miami team didn't show up. Like a lot of Miami teams have. They've lost 11 of their last 12 bowl games, which is a wild stat. They didn't show up just going through the motions, right? They wanted to win that game. It was that first half was incredibly fun. My 9-year-old was like, there's 5 touchdowns in the first quarter. He's like, this is crazy. And that may be another thing with the perception too. You're right about, like, next year there will be AP voters. And it may be different for Iowa State because they get this Dublin game against Kansas State, and that'll kind of stand on its own. So a lot of people will probably watch that game. But there will be a lot of people who don't watch Iowa State again until, I don't know. I don't have their schedule in front of me for next season, but until there's a huge marquee game on national TV, and that may not be until the Big 12 championship again, right? And so in their minds, they're going to think, okay, Rocco Becht, he's a gamer. I know that kid. I know he's good. The defense is not good. I know that about Iowa State, right? Regardless of what happens next season or in the offseason or what we all know about John Haycock and the injury situation they dealt with all season, there is now going to be that perception from anybody who watched that game.
Yeah, the amount of casual viewers for bowl games is awesome. It's what makes bowl season great. And even I look at me just throwing money on the Hawaii Bowl, despite the fact that I guess I watched quite a bit of USF this year just because of Alex Golish being a former Cyclone, so it's probably not the best example. But I throw money on it, and then I'm listening to the announcers, and I think to myself, oh, I didn't know that about this team. I had no idea that was true about this team.
Right.
So we're just idiots for betting on this stuff that we don't know about. But to your point, there's so many people that probably watched Iowa State for the first or second time this year, and the first time would have been that Big 12 championship, and they walked away thinking that their defense was on the level of 2012 Baylor and TCU.
Right.
Over the course of the year, that probably wasn't completely true, but it certainly looked like that if the only quarters of football you watched were the Big 12 championship and the first half of the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
And like Michael says in our comments, the craziest thing is that national media will probably give us more of a bump for winning the Pop-Tarts Bowl than losing a first-round playoff game. And it's crazy, but it is true. I mean, the teams that lost in the first round are completely dismissed, right? They shouldn't have even been there. There's a problem with the system. It's not that they played good teams. It's not that they had a bad day at the end of a good season. It's they didn't deserve it. And Iowa State just won a meaningless game that's silly, and yet it's going to be like, hey, that's a pretty good team. Just beat, the maybe ACC champion.
They won the Pop-Tarts Bowl championship.
Won a toaster, baby. They won a toaster.
I can't wait to see that thing.
You talk about the commenters, too. How could they fit more Pop-Tart references into the commentary of this game? Like, I get it. It's fun, and it's fun to a point. It was like halfway through the first quarter, and I wanted to just mute the TV because it was like every play they were going to find some reference to a Pop-Tart. Oh, that hole opened up like the stripe on the s'mores Pop-Tart. Like, what the... I get it that you're being paid by whoever, right? Pop-Tarts is putting a lot of money into this. You're going to get a lot of media attention already. The sideline guy doesn't need to be in a giant Pop-Tart costume.
Yeah, it kind of crossed the line. And so I did watch this game last year, but I believe it was the night where Cyclone Fanatic had their party at that famous wrestlers bar in Memphis.
Oh,
so
right.
I don't think I watched it with audio. So this was really the first year I took in this Pop-Tarts Bowl with the full, like you said, commercial pretty much every second of the game. And it's fine because it's fun and it's gimmicky and it's not like Bad Boy Mowers.
Right.
If it was the Bad Boys Mower Pinstripe Bowl and they're talking about Bad Boy Mowers every 5 seconds, it's already hard enough to watch Nebraska. I'm turning that game off. But for Pop-Tarts, it's fun, but you're right. It's annoying.
Again, I didn't mind the mascots. I didn't mind I love the sacrificing the Pop-Tart at the end. All of that stuff was fun. The eulogizing the guy who, the strawberry Pop-Tart that got eaten last year. Yeah, that's the announcers didn't need to make it all about Pop-Tarts. It can still be a football game on the field.
Yeah, we're definitely looking into the future of bowl games. I don't know what brands are out there that can do it as well as Pop-Tarts have. They've really, really, really set the bar high.
They have.
And you got to tip your caps to them. And I would imagine they are seeing the benefits on the other end as far as people just going out and buying Pop-Tarts. I bought Pop-Tarts on Saturday for the first time probably in my adult life. I'll buy a random one in the vending machine at work every now and then, but I bought an actual box of Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, my kids asked for Pop-Tarts after watching this game. My son was like, hey, add that to the grocery list. I want some Pop-Tarts.
It'd be a good discussion. I don't have any off the top of my mind right now, but it'd be a good discussion. What brands do you think could pull something similar off?
Right. all the brands are like good on social media because that's kind of it. It's just this is an extension of that, right? Like the kind of quirky social media brands, Wendy's or something.
Mountain Dew. Kyle just said in the comments. I could see Mountain Dew pulling off a good one. Is the kickoff game in Dublin next year going to be sponsored by Pop-Tarts?
I hope
sponsored by Guinness.
It's the only two Pop-Tart Bowl champions facing off against each other.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yeah.
We're going to get the true
championship.
The one true champion of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So let's talk Cam Ward. He is not a Pop-Tarts Bowl champion.
No, he is not.
We could go a lot of different ways with this. What are your thoughts on Ward dominating the first half, opting out like we all heard before the game could happen, and not returning after halftime?
You know, it was it got progressively worse, right, as the game went on, and as Miami needed to score points, and you know, got held to field goals a couple of times, and that final last chance kind of drive that they had, and you just see a guy standing there on the sideline who you don't know, but you think he could probably lead this team down. Now they weren't winning most of the first half when he was playing, but they were right there with Iowa State and were ahead at halftime. We're just in such an interesting place with all of this because it's the question of when is the best time to opt out of a game. Is Cam Ward worse than Caleb Johnson because he played a half? It feels like that. It feels like he's getting a lot more hate than guys who opted out right away. It feels like he's getting more hate than guys like Jaden Higgins and Darian Porter, who went through all of the pregame stuff, went through warm-ups. Cyclone fans thought they were going to play up until kickoff, and all of a sudden they're in street clothes and they're not going to play. And I don't love that either, but it's interesting to me that the guy who actually played in the game and then preserved himself the way that we all understand you probably should, and realized winning a Pop-Tart Bowl isn't worth your first-round NFL draft pick status. It's interesting to me that he's getting so much hate. I could kind of take it or leave it. I think opting out feels the same no matter what, and while I don't like it, I completely understand it. But I think the response to him opting out the way he did has been really interesting to watch.
I think it was fine because it was what was expected. It was reported a lot of different places that don't be shocked if Ward plays a couple series, plays a quarter,
gets
and
that
then opts
record.
out.
Yeah.
So once he didn't start the second half, you think to yourself it's weird because it's a 3-point game and it was already a really entertaining first half. But you get it. It was when they were cutting over to him on the sidelines when Miami goes down 1 with a minute left.
Yes.
And you're like, well, Emory Williams probably can't win this game with what we've seen from him already.
Right.
Do you put Ward back in? I get why not. I don't know if there was a line drawn in the sand between Miami and Ward, and it's like, well, once you're done, you're done. We're going to move on to the Emory era. And I would get that too. And if you're talking about injuries, it probably wouldn't be smart to play almost 2 hours because of how long that first half was, and then sit out for another 2 hours and come back in cold. If anything, that's the best way to get injured. So I get it. But your point about would you rather be Caleb Johnson or Cam Ward? Honestly, for Miami fans, I don't hate it for Cam Ward because you still got those memories in the first half.
Yeah.
You would have liked to win, of course. But it is still cool to see a top 5 draft pick play in a bowl game, if he didn't play the entirety of it. And I know
and play well, right?
We saw Sanders and Hunter, and it did not go well. So to see Ward, I mean, he had 10 seconds every time he dropped back and played really well and had that throw where I've never seen a quarterback put less into a throw.
It was I thought I had
funny.
missed a whistle. Like I thought the play had been he's literally standing. And he doesn't even take a step when he makes the throw. And that's the one that resulted in a fumble for Miami right as they got the first down. But that was one of the more bizarre plays I'd seen. And yeah, it's just the whole opt-out thing is is interesting. It was a bad look that they could keep going back to him on the sideline in uniform as his team loses a lead in a game that, again, doesn't mean much, but in that moment, it's a game. It just the perception of him just standing there. But then you see guys like Bo Freeler, get hurt. Mm-hmm. Anytime you see a guy get hurt in a bowl game, no matter how bad the injury is, it's like, probably shouldn't have been playing. So you completely understand why guys are opting out.
Yeah, until the system changes, I'm never going to blame the guys. For Higgins and Porter, I agree with you. I would have rather it just been announced 3 or 4 days ago or whenever the program knew that they weren't going to play. Don't have them go through warm-ups.
Yeah. Because is Miami...
to decoy the other team.
That's the thing. Would Miami's philosophy, game plan, any of it have been different? I don't think so.
Probably not too much different.
No.
Do it in the Big 12 championship. I don't think you need to decoy the other team in the Pop-Tarts Bowl from here on out. And it'd just be better for the fans. It'd be better for everybody involved if you don't have to deal with the fear of unknown up until kickoff, because it happened in this very bowl game in 21 with Mike Rose. He went through warm-ups, and then that was a true shock when that happened. And that was really the first year of mass opt-outs. So it was different. I think now most people have accepted it. If your guy is going to get drafted, you can't blame him for opting out because of the amount of money that's on the table.
I've said this a couple of times. Bowl games are now more of an extension of next season than they are an extension of the previous season. And like Iowa State got more receivers out there on the field, right? And you got to see what some of these guys like Burkle can do, and it gets you a little bit more excited about next season. And maybe some of those opportunities. I know as an Iowa fan, like I'm excited to see what this running game looks like today without Caleb Johnson. And, we know what we have for the most part in Kamari Moulton or Jazz Patterson, but like who's the featured back? Who's it going to be? What's it look like without, your home run hitter out there? Can one of these guys step up? And so I do think like the good part of opt-outs from a fan is that you get to see some of these players that you expect to come back next year.
Let's do that. Let's move on to the Music City Bowl. For that, I'm going to share some programming we've got right here on Iowa Everywhere. Cyclones Sunday. Yesterday with Ben Bruns and Aiden White, if you missed it. Really, really good in-depth analysis of the Pop-Tarts Bowl and Iowa State season in general. Randy Peterson dropped a new column as well. Check that out on iowaeverywhere.com. We already mentioned the loaded Monday here. Overthinking coming up at noon with Scott McKenzie. Murph and Andy followed by a condensed show because of the Music City Bowl happening at 1:30. Instant Iowa following with AD and Chris Hassel. And later in the week, Derek and I will be on Bigger Than 12 on Thursday this week. We'll be reacting to Arizona State in the playoff, which we will preview the college football playoff in just a minute too. If you want to go somewhere to eat and watch the Music City Bowl, there's no better place than any of the full court press family of restaurants. You got the Iowa Tap Room, Hessen House, the Chicken, Fong's Pizza. My favorite, the Miller High Life Lounge.
Mm-hmm.
80, I live like a 10-minute walk from Miller High Life now.
It's dangerous.
When I was growing up, the Miller High Life Lounge was a once-a-year treat. It was if I got good grades, we'd go there with the family. Now I can walk there anytime I want, and that is dangerous. I love Miller High Life Lounge. I truly love all the full court press restaurants.
They do it well.
Yeah, any of the best restaurants in Des Moines, you don't even realize, oh, yep, that's another full court press restaurant right there. They'll take care of you. You'll get a great meal, some good beer, and a great environment to watch the Music City Bowl. Iowa taking on Missouri today at 1:30 on ESPN in Nashville. AD, I know on Instant Iowa you have a list of what you want to see from Iowa. So before we preview what Missouri's going to have, what's on your list of things you want to see from the Hawkeyes today?
Yeah, so I just mentioned one of them, and it's kind of established a feature back, and I expect Iowa to have a multi-headed running back next season, regardless of what happens today. But I would like to see either Kamari Moulton or Jazz Patterson or who else really establish themselves as like the guy. Again, for perception more than anything, I don't know that there's much tangible that can be gained here, but for perception going into a long off season, if Iowa fans can say, hey, Kamari Moulton, we got this guy, he had 150 yards in the bowl game and looks great, I think that would be really good to see. Let Brendan Sullivan cook. Let's see the offense we saw against Wisconsin, in the second half against Northwestern. Maybe not the offense we saw against UCLA, but he's not going to be downfield. He's not going to be a prolific passer. I think 100 yards or more through the air is good enough. But I want to see a dynamic offense that we did see for a couple of games under Brendan Sullivan. Whether or not he's the guy going into next season, I think he is the guy going into the offseason. And so you want to feel good about that. I think Iowa fans mostly do feel good about him. But I want to see him have a good game and again, kind of see that offense look, again, not downfield, not world beating, but he had good chemistry with guys like Jacob Gill. He had some good chemistry within that offense. I want to see that be reestablished. Defensively, really, it's just don't give up those big plays. And Iowa's done a pretty good job of that in the second half of the season. The first half of the season, they were really plagued by those big plays, those home run plays. Hasn't happened as much, but you still worry about that. It's still in the back of your head as a Hawkeye fan that, man, you can get beat deep at any point. And then this is a high bar for special teams, but flawless, right? I mean, flawless special teams. Make every kick, have good punts, good coverage, don't fumble, win the special teams game, and you do pretty good. So those are kind of the four things I'm looking to see.
A high bar for 132 teams in FBS. Right. The standard for
exactly.
Iowa.
It's what's expected.
So you're the Iowa guy. You pretty much nailed it all in the head. That's what I would look for, especially heading into next season. If I'm an Iowa fan, I do want to see Sullivan not be reckless airing it out, but it's a bowl game, so why not try and throw downfield? We all saw the throw that he had at UCLA. It was the best throw from an Iowa quarterback since Nate Stanley probably. So I think more downfield the better, but also don't get away from your game. We've seen Iowa be really good in bowl games because they play their game and teams just get frustrated by it. I want to talk Missouri. I don't think Missouri's great, and I've been a huge Missouri hater this whole year because I think the sole purpose they've been ranked in the college football playoff the entire time is just to give Alabama and these other teams a ranked win.
Right.
That's not to say Missouri's bad.
No.
But
they haven't beaten anybody.
Yeah, their best wins Arkansas.
Yeah.
Maybe OU.
Now they haven't lost to anybody bad either, right? And Iowa, that's the glaring thing on Iowa's resume are those games against Michigan State and UCLA, two not very good teams that really beat Iowa pretty well. So that's the kind of scary thing I think as a Hawkeye fan going into this game is, man, if your defense shows up the way it did in those games, you're probably going to struggle. But you're right. I don't. It's hard to know exactly what this Missouri team has because they lost the games you thought they would lose. They won most of the games you thought they would win. They haven't done anything to kind of look at that, And you're right. I'd believe they've been ranked because you want to have as many SEC teams ranked as possible.
Yeah, and they didn't just lose. Their ranked losses were blowouts.
Yes.
Almost similar to what Iowa was the last 2 years, where they beat everybody they should, but their ranked losses were blowouts. So I think that probably plays a little bit into Iowa's favor. Of course, they've been hit with opt-outs as well.
Yeah, they're
missing 2 O-linemen, 2 wide receiver, and including Luther Burton III, who's going to be a first-round pick. Their tight end, their linebacker. All in all, I think this Missouri team is closer to the 2022 Kentucky team that Iowa saw in the Music City Bowl than they are Tennessee from last year.
Yeah.
Which that was, you didn't know what you were going to get out of the freshman quarterback, Nico Ime.
I am lava.
I nailed it when I was at the Citrus Bowl last year for the day.
We'll cut Jake's nailing it last year, and we'll just splice it in here for the podcast.
I nailed it for the one day on the Citrus Bowl. It did not get placed in my long-term memory, and every time I've tried to say it this college football season, I've totally messed it up.
That was such a good example though of like the bowl game being more about next year, and like, oh, we all kind of saw, oh, this Tennessee team with this kid, this looks pretty good. Like, this is probably a better team than they were all season. I don't expect that from Missouri today.
No.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, they're saying all the right things. Drinkwitz is saying all the right things. I talked to a writer from Missouri who, you know, she said, hey, they want to be here. This is his first class. They're now seniors. You know, they want to go out with a win. This means a lot to them. You don't know whether or not that's true until they actually get on the field. You know, if Iowa can go down and score early in this game and get a stop early, does that, you know, suck all of the life out of a Missouri team, or vice versa, right? Does Missouri jump out to a lead and Iowa's like, shit, here we go again? And I mean, that's the unpredictable thing about these bowl games is they can turn on a dime like that.
Yeah, I think I always think about that in football. Like, what happens when the other team scores first in a game that might be deemed meaningless by some, what happens, but I think it's inflated during bowl season.
Absolutely.
And that's where, when Iowa State recovers a fumble on the first play of the game the other day and go out and score, I think to myself, well, does Miami just roll over and die? And I couldn't have been more wrong because they score a 70-yard touchdown the next play. But
had they not, I mean, had Miami come out and not scored on that first play, or had to punt at some point, like, who knows how long Cam Ward actually stays in there,
right?
You know, and so that's now, I do think as an Iowa fan, the thing that we have that most places don't is the Kirk Ferentz and the culture around Iowa,
right.
And like that it really does. I mean, there are a lot of cliches, but it really does feel like the guys who are going to be there playing do care. I mean, there's a reason that guys like Jay Higgins are going to play in this game. I expect them to play the whole game. You know, there are guys trying to come back from injury just to play in this game. The players love Kirk Ferentz. They love this program. They will play hard for him regardless. But again, you're humans, and if you're down 14-0, you know, going into the second quarter, and you throw a pick, it's like, here we go again.
Yeah.
It can fall apart pretty quickly.
So what's your score prediction for today?
So I noticed on Randy Pete's column, you and I are the only two who picked Iowa to win this game.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I picked 17-14 Hawkeyes. And again, like most games, I think it's more about Iowa than it is about Missouri. I think Iowa's defense will play well in this game. I think they'll be able to hold Missouri down. If they can stop the run and make Missouri one-dimensional, I really like Iowa's chances. And then it's just, what is Brendan Sullivan and this offense able to do? I don't know how healthy he's been or when he got healthy, but I liked the chemistry I saw between he and Tim Lester in the few times we did see him, and then between him and the wide receivers. I think Iowa's running game won't be what it was with Caleb Johnson, but it'll be good enough. It'll be 80% of that. You know, Moulton might not be able to break off the big run like Johnson did, but they can work their way down the field running the ball. So if Iowa can establish the run and stop the run, I think that's the key to the game, and I think they'll be able to do that. I don't think it's going to be a super exciting game, not high scoring. They'll score fewer points in this game than Iowa State and Miami scored in the first quarter of their game, is my prediction. But I do think Iowa finds a way to win.
It was 35 points in the first quarter?
Yeah, 35. I know I so perfectly middled the over under because I think I had 55. I went over 55. And then at partway through the game, it was like 90. And I was like, they're not scoring 90, so I went under and I hit both.
It got up to 101 at one point. Got up to
triple digits. It's amazing.
Didn't even get close. But so you mentioned it. I also picked Iowa to win. I'm going to stick with it. I said 13-10.
Yeah, I can
Missouri,
see that.
They're already pretty mediocre through the air. And then you take out easily their best option in Luther Burton. It should be pretty easy for Phil Parker to make them one-dimensional, like you said. And if they do that, I like a culture type win for Iowa. 13-10 might be a little low scoring, But I just went all in for the Brand. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, screw it. Let's say 9 to 3
4.
with a touchdown, a pick six, and a safety.
It'd be a throwback to the South Dakota State game, which was the first. That was like my second week on the job at Local 5. So that was the first college football game I've ever covered.
And you're like,
and
oh my God.
It was the double safety. Was it 9-6, 9-7, something like that? Or no, it was 10-7.
10-7
with 2 field goals and 2 safeties.
You're like, God, I picked the wrong industry, man. I thought this was supposed to be fun.
Yeah. I'm like, this is a great preview of the year to come for Iowa. But like you said, if Iowa wins, fans will be leaving happy.
Yeah,
fans in Nashville will be glad they went. They'll have a fun night down on Broadway Street, and that's what it's about.
And if they lose, fans will be pissed, and it's going to feel like the season was. I mean, the season is a disappointment regardless of what happens today, but it's going to feel even more so. There's going to be more talk around Kirk Ferentz and his legacy and his job, moving forward, around Tim Lester and what has he actually accomplished this year. And then you lose a lot of pieces, and Iowa has done okay in the transfer portal, but not great. And so it really is going to dictate, as dumb as it is, and it is dumb, but it is true. How Iowa does this afternoon will dictate how Hawkeye fans feel about this team for the next 8 months.
That's bowl season, baby.
There we go.
It shouldn't be that way, but
it is.
But you're totally right. Let's move on a little bit to the college football playoff. 4 games over the next 2 days.
Yeah.
I'd like to give a shout out to a few sponsors before that. The Iowa Event Center, they've got a lot going on over the next couple months. Of course, you've got a bunch of Iowa Wild and Iowa Wolves games there. You've got the World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th. Get your tickets now in just a couple of weeks. And then May 31st, I'll be in the house. Get your tickets for Shane Gillis.
Yeah.
You could argue he's the hottest comedian in the world right now. He was a star on College Game Day. He ruffled some feathers with Nick Saban.
That was amazing.
I hope he has some of that in his stand-up on May 31st. Get your tickets for all of it. Go to iowaeventcenter.com to see a full list of their events. Game Day Men's Health. I can tell you've been going to Game Day. AD,
right?
It
does
does
tell
wonders.
how I carry myself. Yeah. I've been getting the tee shots for a few months now, and it's been fantastic. I mean, it really is one of the best things I've done for myself. And yeah, I mean, a lot of New Year's resolutions coming up for guys. We don't talk about our health that much as men, but it is important. And especially as you get a little bit older, you need a little help, and they can help you out. And so hit up Game Day Men's Health. They're in Ankeny in the Prairie Trail neighborhood, on University in West Des Moines, or if you're in the eastern side of the state, they're in North Liberty. You may see Scott Dochtman over there. And yeah, just go, get a consultation. They'll do a little blood work, let you know how they can help, if they can help. There's no pressure. There's no sales tactics. They're just there to help you. It's incredibly professional and, high level. And, I've really, really enjoyed, as Mike points out in the comments, I wouldn't be able to do 3 podcasts today if I wasn't on the tee from Game Day. So I appreciate them.
Yeah, you'd be tapping out at 1.5 probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, sorry, Murph, I'm out.
I couldn't do 3 today, and I'm not at Game Day on the tee, so that would explain it.
There you go.
And then of course, Freedom Tire. We've been pretty fortunate so far with a temperate winter. It won't always be like that. Go get your tires checked out now. Go get your car ready, winterized. They got locations in Ames, Altoona, Fleur Drive in Des Moines, West Des Moines, and over there on Hickman and Urbandale, up in AD's neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I think Aiden was going to sing the Freedom Tire jingle
I think
today.
that's what he said.
Yeah, you guys heard wrong.
I think that's the conclusion we came to, right?
Yeah, we'll have to take it up with management since Aiden didn't fulfill his duty. Well, let's talk college football quick. Got 4 games, 1 on New Year's Eve. That is Boise State, Penn State, 3 on New Year's Day. These games should be better than the first round, right?
I mean, they almost have to be, right? I don't think they're all going to be better, but I do think that that they will be better. I think this is going to be the test. It's going to show us. I think what we probably already know is there's only a handful of teams that are truly capable of winning this thing. I'm not sure many of them played in the first round. Like, I think 4, maybe 5 teams, even in this final 8, are capable of actually making this run and going all the way. And so with that being said, like, I still expect a couple of these games to be a little bit out of hand, but that's also what the college football playoff was like when it was 4 teams. It's what the BCS was like when it was 1 game.
Right.
I mean, you get into these games and you're not guaranteed a close game, even if it is 2 good teams. And so I think there will be better games. At the very least, the perception will be different, unless Boise State and Arizona State both get blown out. Then the perception of those teams will be the same. It'll be, well, they didn't even deserve to be there.
Yeah, for college football's sake, I hope that doesn't happen.
I agree.
As far as the people that are pro-expansion, like I am, and I'm sure you are, if Notre Dame and Texas, or not Texas, if Notre Dame and Ohio State win, that's a good day for the expansionists, because those are 2 teams that wouldn't have been in the top 4 originally, most likely, and they go in and knock off the top 2 seeds. And I'm still a little iffy on Notre Dame on if they can win the national championship. I think they can win 2 or 3 in a row. Ohio State absolutely can win the national championship. If those 2 teams could go out there, that would definitely help the perception of the expanded playoff. But again, Boise State and Arizona State, if they get blown out, it'll be just a repeat of what we saw with SMU, Indiana, which it's annoying. I've gotten pretty good at blocking out the endless cycle of how it's perceived. Between those 2 teams, which do you feel better about pulling an upset?
I mean, it's interesting because they both have, one great player, it seems like, who could kind of take over and do anything. I think Arizona State probably has a better chance to knock off Texas than Boise and Penn State. Now, that being said, I think Texas is a better team than Penn State. But Arizona State's played in a power conference, and I do think that makes a difference. Maybe it's recency bias because I just watched them play in the Big 12 championship and look really good. I don't think they're going to win, but if I had to pick between those 2, it'd be Arizona State.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I was on the field. Up front, they felt bigger than Iowa State, which is a good sign when you're going to play an SEC school. It's something you need. And Texas beat Clemson, but the game was a lot closer than the score indicated. Clemson had the ball at the goal line at the 1, got stuff that would have made it a 1-score game. And Quinn Ewers hasn't proven to me that he can be trusted for a full game. All it takes is 1 or 2 bad turnovers. And if Arizona State can get a lead, get into the end zone, that's a hard team to play from behind.
Yeah.
And it's just easier for me to draw a path in my head to an Arizona State win than a Boise State win, unless, James Franklin's it. And
that's
loses his mind, which is a possibility.
That's the thing. I mean, that's the X factor for Penn State. It's why I don't think they're capable of winning a national championship. I don't trust him to win 3 more big games. I mean, you think now we're at a point where you have to win 3 big games now to win a national championship. Who can actually do that? I don't think Penn State can do that. And it's mostly because of James Franklin.
Yeah, I would be impressed if they beat Boise and then won 1 more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would be very impressed if they did that. I don't see it. I agree with you. I think it's Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State.
Yeah, it's chalk, right? I mean, now I guess Ohio State, Oregon isn't chalk by the seeding, and neither is Texas, Arizona State. And I guess Boise. The seeding is weird. The seeding throws me off. It's chalk as far as like the favorites.
Yeah,
right?
calling
like
the underdog the 8th or the what would it be, the 6th seed, and it feels wrong, but it's not that way at all. So
yeah, because I mean, you've got the 6th seed is favored by 12 over the 3 seed, right? The 5 seed is favored by 12.5.
I think that's what we see.
The 4 seed. And so, yeah, I do too. I think that will change moving forward. So I guess I'm not picking chalk as far as the bracket. I'm picking chalk as far as Vegas. I agree. Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, or Georgia rather. And then I do think Ohio State edges Oregon in a rematch of that game.
Yeah, I wrote down, I didn't go score. I just said by. So I went Georgia over Notre Dame by 3, Ohio State over Oregon by 10, Texas by 7 over Arizona State. I do think that game's a little closer. And then Penn State over Boise by 20. I think that's the lone blowout we see.
I do too.
Especially if Penn State gets a lead. Genty's great, but it's hard to run the ball when you're down.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that Penn State defense played so well in the first round. I think they will again. And Boise State's just so one-dimensional. Should
be fun. I'm hope for everyone's sake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us 2 or 3 great games.
Please.
We need it on New Year's Day. Because those are the only games, I believe. I don't think there's any normal bowl games. I guess I didn't. I should have looked.
I'm so confused by the Bulls. I mean, because I was the only team to play today.
So weird.
And that's at 1:30, which is a weird time for that game. It's basically just to the point where I wake up in the morning and then look at the schedule. Okay, here's what we have today.
Yeah, we've got the Bad Boys Mower, Pinstripe, whatever.
Exactly.
Well, it's time for Bigger, Better, Bolder, brought to you by Kelderman Manufacturing. We're going to bring Aiden in as well.
Bigger, better, bolder. Built by Kelderman Manufacturing.
Well, we haven't heard from Aiden a ton today, so let's let Mr. Aiden Wyatt, filling in for Matty Van Winkle, go first on his Bigger, Better, Bolder.
All right, I'm going with Syracuse legend now, Kyle McCord. This poor bastard was told he wasn't good enough at Ohio State. You know who's not good enough at Ohio State? Might be Ryan Day. Ooh. So anyway, Kyle McCord obviously hits the portal after last year. Can't beat Michigan, so obviously that's the worst thing in the world for the Buckeyes. Heads to Syracuse. He breaks Deshaun Watson's single-season record, which blew my mind watching the Holiday Bowl the other night. I think it was the Holiday Bowl, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. Kid who was told he wasn't good enough. Go ahead and breaks Deshaun Watson, who, say what you want about him, he's probably the best ACC quarterback in conference history. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's bigger, better, bolder.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Shoved aside in a historic season up for the Qs. I'm going to go with Victor Wembanyama. So he dropped 40 on Christmas, had like 15 rebounds, 4 blocks. But I'm not talking about that. A couple days ago, I woke up on Twitter. He tweeted at like 8 in the morning. Yeah, 8:36 a.m. Who wants to meet me at the southwest corner of Washington Square Park in New York City to play chess? I'm there. This wasn't a joke. He showed up and played chess. He took a picture with 30, 40 people. And yeah, look at that smile. That's what it's all about. And there's been so much talk in the NBA about why are the ratings down? The ratings are down because I don't think the NBA is embracing a guy like Wemby enough yet. We're still stuck in the era of the old guys, which it's what we grew up with. I'll always love LeBron, Steph, KD, but eventually we got to move on to Wemby, and stuff like that is so awesome. And some of the videos of him, like it all seemed wholesome.
Yeah,
like it seemed like he just genuinely wanted to be there playing chess with people. And to me, that's bigger, better, bolder. He's a superstar on the court, and he's becoming a really great superstar personality off the court. And it could be something that the NBA needs to bridge into this new era.
Yeah, super likable dude. Absolutely. My bigger, better, bolder is going to go with Bo Freeler. We didn't talk about him a lot in our recap of the game, but man, an injury-plagued season, injury-plagued career. Fought through to play in this game. Didn't have to play in this game, but wanted to and did. And then when the injury happened, you could see on the players' faces, on the coaches' faces, on social media within the fan base, just how much he meant to this team and this program. You could hear it when they talked about him after the game. Just the emotion. And Matt Campbell I don't take everything he says without a grain of salt, but when he talks as passionately about a guy like Bo Freeler, like he did after this game, you really get to the sense of who this kid is and what he's meant to this team and this program. And then for him to be up on crutches on the stage, apparently they didn't want him, like he wasn't going to be allowed up there, but he found his way up there. I think that's super cool. Just a guy who, yeah, Campbell helped Freeler off the field. I mean, how cool is that? It really, hats off to him for a good career. Who knows what'll be next for him. It sucks he got injured in this game, but it was cool to see him play and cool to see the kind of him get that love. You know, it's one of those things where you don't want him to get injured, obviously, but if he doesn't, you wonder if he doesn't get the kind of outpouring of love and support that he got on Saturday. And so hats off to him. That was really cool to see.
Yeah, it's no secret the injuries he's dealt with.
Yeah.
Over the course of his career. I actually had a cool moment with him after the K-State game. I asked him, when you're playing with essentially one shoulder and always injured, how do you show up every day? And he shared a story about a kid that they brought up from a children's hospital in Kansas City, I believe. And the whole team visited with him, and he's like, well, if he can fight cancer, whatever I'm dealing with is not that big of a deal. And I thought that was great perspective. And Bo's always been a great guy to the media to interview. And from everything we've heard and everything we've seen, a great leader for Iowa State football. It's a great choice for Bigger, Better, Bolder, brought to you by Kelderman Manufacturing. We're going to close with some basketball. Iowa State, and even the Iowa State women actually are already in conference play a little bit. Iowa State gets things started tonight with Colorado. But we're just going to kind of fly through and do a big picture conference preview of what would be considered a success for the Iowa State men, Iowa men, and then the Iowa and Iowa State women. Let's start with the Iowa State men. What would be considered a success in Big 12 play?
Man, I mean, it sucks to set the bar this high, but go win the conference. I mean, right? Anything short of that. Now, you can see a situation where they finish second or third in the Big 12 and they had injuries, or they, had these close games. They lost on the road, this and that. They protected home court. You can see a scenario where that happens and they still get a 2 or a 3 seed and you feel good about it. But as we sit here today, heading into conference play before 2025 starts, this team is good enough to go win this league. To be undefeated at home, obviously, protect Hilton Magic, and then go on the road and win a bunch of games. I mean, they feel like they're complete. They've had some good non-conference challenges, and they've faced those down. I think losing the game early on is probably going to be a good thing for them. And so go win the Big 12 and get that 1 seed. And make your run. I think again it's tough to set the bar that high, but that is where it's set for this team right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wrote down 15-5 is probably the number you're looking at for a share. I think a share would get it done. 16-4, you're looking outright. And I know that sounds like a huge number. But
does.
16-4, that means you're losing 1 game out of every 5 that you play in league play. You go undefeated at Hilton and then 6-4 on the road. That's doable, and that's what's expected out of teams that you expect to contend for a Final Four and a national championship. And that's what I said on Bigger Than 12 last week, is Kansas, for the longest time under Bill Self, when they're a 3.5-point favorite on the road in a tough environment, they win.
Yeah.
And that's how they won so many Big 12 regular season championships. That's what Iowa State will have to do, and I agree with you. That's what they got to do for it to be a success and ultimately get a top 2 seed, preferably a 1. How about the Iowa men?
So it's a little more difficult for them, but I think close to what you did last year, just a little bit better, right? Like top half of the Big Ten, be better than 500 in Big Ten play, get to the tournament. The unfortunate thing about where Iowa is as a program right now is nothing is going to feel successful until they get to a Sweet 16. It doesn't matter what they do in the regular season. If they don't make a Sweet 16, it's not going to feel successful. And if they do, it will. And that's just where they are as a program. And it's a tough place to be because I don't think this team is capable of doing that. But as I think fans who can look at it rationally and objectively would say, a top half finish, better than 500 in the league, get to the tournament. That's a pretty successful season. Again, it's all going to feel terrible when they lose in the first or second game in the big dance, though.
Yeah, I said NCAA tournament, no play-in game.
Yeah.
So be one of the top 64 teams.
And it seems like the Big Ten's going to get a bunch of teams in, so it's not like you have to be, top 6. You can be top 8 and feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, and they made it out of the non-con with no bad losses, unlike last year. I know the Utah State loss, from a fan perspective, probably isn't great, but it still is a quad 1 loss.
Yeah.
And I know last year they had a rough non-con, and they made it a tough climb in Big Ten play. I think entering Big Ten play in a better spot, you just need to pick up a couple key wins, get right around 500, and you should be right there in the NCAA tournament. And it's year 15.
Right.
Eventually, you'd think one of those hot shooting nights comes in the round of 32.
It's got to
eventually
happen.
It has to happen.
It's got to happen at some point.
You just got to get in the dance. And maybe just one year the chips will fall for a Sweet 16 run. But yeah, I get why you would think.
There's just so much apathy around the program right now. It's just a really tough place to be.
Yeah. Well, there's no apathy right now for the Iowa women.
No.
Even without Caitlin Clark, Kate Martin, Gabby Marshall, they're still popular. They're still selling out. Carver beat Purdue yesterday, so they're 1-1 to start Big Ten play. What's a success for the Iowa women?
Find some consistency. I mean, obviously make the tournament, do well in the Big Ten, but they're not going to go win the Big Ten this year. They're not going to go 15-5 or anything like that, right? They're going to lose some games. They've shown some inconsistencies. They've shown some struggles with turnovers and some other things. But so find some of that consistency and then continue to develop that depth. I think yesterday, if you look at the box score, it's like nobody scored more than like 14 points and a bunch of people scored 9, right?
Yeah.
And so find that depth, build yourself out as a program. There's such a great opportunity for this program right now to prove that they're more than Caitlin Clark and really more than Lisa Bluter. It's a good opportunity for Jan Jensen, and I think she's done well so far. But maintain this throughout the season and really establish yourself as a legitimate program post Caitlin Clark, a place where players want to come and play. You don't need to go make a Final Four this year. I think if you want to be a blue blood program, you need to make a Final Four in the next few years to kind of keep that momentum moving forward. But this doesn't need to be that year. You just need to show that you weren't all Caitlin Clark last year, and there's something to hang your hat on moving forward. So that's kind of where I am with the Iowa women.
Yeah, the good news is there's still tons of momentum. They're still selling out Carver. They're really fun to watch.
They are.
Lucy Olson, her pulling up in the mid-range, it's almost like Sean Livingston. It's beautiful every time she does it. But the problem for Iowa right now is the Big Ten is loaded.
It is. 7
ranked teams. The 2 of the new teams that you brought in from the Pac-12 are elite, and UCLA is ranked number 1 in the country, and USC is the best player in the country. Wins are going to be harder to come across, not just because of no Caitlin Clark, but also because of the amount of elite teams. I think they'll be really tough to beat at home still, but it's going to be hard to win on the road. I said be a top 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. I expect them to finish in the top 5, 6 of the conference. As long as you do that, upset a couple teams at home, you should be in that 4 to 6 range come March. And who knows how the team's developed by then. They've got so many freshmen playing right now off the bench.
Yes.
If they can take a step up, like we saw so many players under Lisa Bluter, the way Sydney Fulter was playing by the end of her sophomore year with more experience, feels like players develop really fast in that program. So continue to see that defense develop and the bench come through. They could definitely make some noise in March, but I don't expect a Final Four run.
No, you should.
And we're going to talk Iowa State. And I think what we've seen from Iowa State so far this year, it almost makes what Iowa did more impressive the past couple of years.
Yes.
Because you get this false sense of hope. Oh my gosh, well, Iowa beat UConn in South Carolina. This is like, there's more parity in the women's game. And then we saw what happened to Iowa State when they played South Carolina and UConn. It makes it more incredible that I'm not going to call Caitlin Clark David from the Bible, but it makes it more impressive when Iowa, David, goes up against Goliath and beats South Carolina. For Iowa State, I think I'm just going to, it might be crazy to say, but just be a better seed than last year.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I'm saying that when they were ranked top 10 in the preseason, had all these expectations.
Right.
They're 0-4 against Power 4 opponents. 2 humiliating losses to South Carolina and UConn, a loss to UNI, almost lost to Drake. The defense has been really bad, but they're still young.
Yeah.
Which is they're younger than last year somehow. It doesn't make sense to me, but they are. But they do look like a bubble team. And the Big 12 isn't great, so they should be able to defend Hilton and get in the tournament. But for me, I think a success would be being better than a 10 seed, which is what they were last year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Get a single digit seed, show some flashes of what we expected in the preseason, beat some teams that maybe you're not expected to beat, defend Hilton. I think those are all the things. I think you throw out talk of a Final Four, talk of being a top 10 team. That's just not where they are right now. Now, maybe they build themselves back into that throughout the course of these next couple of months, but I don't think you should expect that. I think a success is exactly what you said. Show some flashes of that, get better, get that single digit seed, and try to go make some noise in March.
Yeah, Addie Brown's always been one of my favorite players to watch, but we need to see her develop into a true Robin to Audie Crooks, not just every other night.
Yeah.
She needs to be out there every night, 15, 10, and 5, because I think Iowa State's missing that a little bit. And Emily Ryan, of course, has been dealing with health issues, so they really need a second option and some players off the bench to step up. But it should be a fun basketball season.
Yeah, it should.
You got a top 5 men's basketball team. Iowa is going to be in the top 25 for the women, and then the Iowa men, Iowa State women, both will be playing in competitive games pretty much every night.
And you got an undefeated Drake. You got an undefeated Drake. You got a couple of good women's teams in the Valley there.
Bennett Sturtz. Bennett Sturtz would maybe be the best player on Iowa.
Yeah.
And that says more about Sturtz, I think.
It really
that
does.
Kid's a stud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to... Aiden, do you have anything we missed? Anything you want to add?
Don't think so. One thing I do want to say about the Iowa women, which I want to get AD's opinion on this. I mean, the expectations, I think, were somewhat low coming into the season, just with all the changes. Are they at a point where everything is just kind of gravy? Not gravy, that's not the right term. But
again, objectively, probably so. Just as, like, you know, if you think of Iowa as how they've been as a program, then yeah, like, I mean, what they're doing right now, kind of how they've started this season, it does kind of feel like that. But I think if the thing I've been thinking about for 2 years now is what can you be post Caitlin Clark? And as the women's game explodes and gets bigger and bigger, there's going to be more room for blue bloods, right? As these as young girls get better and emulate Caitlin Clark and come through high school and are looking for schools, there's more players now than can just fill the rosters of South Carolina and UConn and, you know, teams like Tennessee of the past. There's room for blue bloods in women's college basketball, for new ones. And Iowa can be one of those teams thanks to Caitlin Clark and kind of what they built right as this sport was starting to burgeon. And so I think generally, yeah, you're right. It is mostly gravy. But if you want to go out there and grab that next thing and become one of those teams, then putting up a really good season this year would go a long way in doing that. And getting more transfers like Lucy Olson and getting more high school players to come and play for you and establishing that Jan Jensen is going to lead this program, you know, for another successful decade.
And I think another reason I kind of thought of this was there was so much pressure with the teams from the last 2 years, especially last year being like, you got to win this year. Like, this is
Absolutely.
it. And now it's kind of like, well, you still have a good team. You clearly have a good coach. Like,
they're definitely having more fun this year,
Yes.
right? And in a lot of ways,
fully
they're
agree
more
with that.
fun to watch. Now, I'd rather watch Caitlin Clark play than any athlete I've ever rooted for. She would do things that I would just stare at my TV and laugh because you had no other reaction to it. But as a team, they're more fun to watch this year, and it's going to be way more up and down. I mean, we're so used to Iowa just winning all of these games and having that player at the end of the game, and maybe they don't have that as much this year, but it is fun, that's for sure. They're having fun.
I totally forgot about this game, but it came across on my feed this morning, the North Carolina State game from either last year or Clark's junior year. They were down 10 at Carver, and Caitlin scored, I think, 11 points in a minute 30. And there's so many games like that you take for granted that those just aren't coming too often anymore. No. I mean, stuff like that happens in college basketball. The Iowa men did it a couple of years ago against Michigan State.
Right.
But when Clark did it, it was the 10th time she's done it. So
yeah, exactly. And
it's totally different.
It got to the point where you expected it, and then she would actually do it, and it's like, what the hell? That was fun. That was fun.
It was a crazy time. I definitely, I don't think I realized it too much in the moment. It's more looking back.
Yeah.
Like I came across the LSU Elite Eight highlights the other day too. Absurd performance. But what matters is there's still fun college basketball in the state.
Absolutely.
And I cannot wait for Saturday to get into Hilton. Iowa State does have I think a sneaky tough game tonight against Colorado, a team they already beat by 28 on a neutral site. But I'm a Nuggets fan. I know what it's like to watch teams go into the altitude and run out of gas. For Iowa State's sake, I hope they get out to a 15-point lead and put Colorado to sleep, because I don't really want to see what the effects of altitude could be in a close game in the last 8 minutes.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
10.5-point favorites. I thought that was a little high.
That feels a little high. But again, this team is just
maybe Vegas knows something.
That's the thing. I mean, like, they were down for 32 minutes of that Iowa game, and one going away. So you could see that happen too.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up here.
Yeah, man.
On
this
Two
was
Guys.
Fun.
This is awesome. Thanks to Chris and Maddie Van Winks for giving us the chance to fill in.
They'll be back Thursday. Are they all back Thursday, Aiden? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They'll
starting
be back
2025 the right way.
Yep.
Back on Thursday. Thanks to Fareway Meat and Grocery, Channel Seed. We've got Iowa Event Center, Game Day Men's Health, Freedom Tire, Full Court Press, all these local companies supporting Iowa everywhere. Go buy some merch.
Yeah, buddy.
From the Iowa Everywhere merch store put together by AD and AKC Marketing. Shirt's so comfy. Supporting local media. There's nothing better. I'm Jake Brend. For Andrew Downs. Check him out another 10 times today on Iowa Everywhere. Thanks for listening to Two Guys.